My fiancée manipulated me for 3 years and spent $50,000 on a fake wedding. But when I heard the call where she called me the richest simp, I exposed everything on social media and destroyed her life completely. I'm 31 years old, work in corporate finance, and honestly, I thought I had found the person I was going to spend the rest of my life with. Spoiler alert, I was wrong. And when I say I was wrong, I mean I was basically the protagonist of my own romantic horror movie. Except everything was real, and it hurt like hell. I guess I should start from the beginning. When I met Victoria like 3 years ago, though honestly sometimes it feels like it was in a completely different lifetime. I met her on a dating app, Tinder or Bumble. I don't remember exactly which one, because at that time I was on all of them trying to find something real after a terrible streak of dates that went nowhere. Victoria was 29 when we met, worked in marketing or something like that, and looked amazing in her photos. Our first date was at an Italian restaurant downtown, nothing super fancy but not cheap either, like a mid to high level place where pasta costs like $25 a plate, and the conversation flowed in a way I hadn't experienced in years. We talked about everything, from our families to our jobs, our dreams, the shows we liked, and I remember thinking that night, okay, this girl is different. This girl gets it. I laughed more in those 3 hours than in the last 6 months, and when I drove her to her apartment and we said goodbye with a kiss, I felt butterflies in my stomach like I was 16 again. The first few months were, well, magical is the corny but accurate word. We went out every weekend, sometimes during the week too when we both had time, and we'd go to restaurants, movies, walk through the park, normal couple stuff when you're just starting out. You know? I earned, well, pretty well actually, because I had worked hard for years and had moved up quickly in my company, so I didn't mind paying for dates because, honestly, I liked making her happy and seeing her smile when I opened the car door for her, or bought her flowers for no special reason. My best friend, Justin, who I've known since college, told me that Victoria seemed great, but not to rush things too much because we'd only been together a few months. But I was in that phase where everything feels perfect, and you don't want to hear warnings from anyone. About 6 months into dating, Victoria started staying at my apartment more often, which at that time was a pretty decent place in a good part of the city. A 2-bedroom with a city view that had cost me a fortune but was worth every penny. She brought her things little by little, first a toothbrush, then clothes, then more clothes. And before I realized it, she was basically living with me, even though technically she still had her own place. It didn't bother me at all. In fact, I liked waking up and seeing her there, making breakfast together on Saturdays, all those domestic things that sound boring but feel special when you're in love, or at least, when you think you are. After a year of being together, I decided it was time. I took her to a vineyard outside the city, one of those beautiful places with endless rows of grapes and a colonial house in the background, like something out of a wedding magazine. I had planned everything weeks in advance. I had even talked to her parents. Her dad, who was a school teacher, and her mom, who had a small bakery in their neighborhood. Hard-working and honest people who I liked from the moment I met them. I proposed at sunset, with the ring I had bought after spending like 3 weeks researching diamond cuts and carats and all that shit I never thought I'd care about, but that suddenly became super relevant. She said yes, obviously, cried, hugged me, we took pictures, the whole complete perfect proposal package you see on Instagram. Now this is where things start to get weird, although at the time, I didn't see it. After we got engaged, Victoria started to change subtly, or maybe I started noticing things that had always been there, but that I had ignored because I was too blinded by love or whatever. She started mentioning more often that she wanted things, not in a super direct way at first, more like casual comments like, oh, the neighbor has a beautiful Gucci bag, or I'd love to have a new car because mine is already old. I didn't think much about it because, well, everyone wants things, right? It's normal to want to have better things, especially when you see that your partner can afford them. But then the comments became more frequent and more specific. She wanted to upgrade her car, which actually worked perfectly fine, a 2018 Honda Civic that had nothing wrong with it, but she insisted she needed something better, something that was more appropriate for a future wife of someone in my position. Those were her exact words. Appropriate for my position. as if my job defined what kind of car my future wife should drive. I bought her a BMW 3 Series, used but in perfect condition, because I thought it would make her happy and because, honestly, I could pay for it without it affecting my budget too much. She was excited for like a week, and then she started talking about jewelry, designer clothes, wanting to renovate my apartment because it was too masculine and needed a woman's touch. Justin told me something didn't add up, that Victoria was being too materialistic, but I defended my fiancé because that's what you do when you love someone, right? You defend their flaws, rationalize their behaviors, convince yourself that everything is okay, even when there are red flags everywhere. I told Justin that Victoria just wanted us to share a home that reflected both of us, that it was normal for a woman to want to contribute to the decoration and lifestyle, that he was being too suspicious because he had always been the type of protective friend who distrusts all my girlfriends. The wedding planning was, looking back, a nightmare, disguised as a romantic dream. Victoria wanted everything in the most expensive way possible. The venue she chose cost, like $15,000 just for the rental, not counting food or drinks or anything else. The dress she picked was from a designer I hadn't even heard of, but who was apparently super famous, and it cost $8,000. $8,000 for a dress she was going to wear once. The honeymoon she planned was in Bora Bora, 2 weeks in one of those overwater resorts that cost like $1,000 a night, minimum. Every time I suggested something more reasonable or more modest, she would get angry and tell me that we were only getting married once, that this was our special day, that I didn't understand how important it was for a woman to have her dream wedding. And I paid. I paid for everything. Because in my head, I thought this was what you did when you loved someone. You gave them what they wanted. You made them happy. You sacrificed your financial comfort for their happiness. My savings started to drop considerably, but Victoria assured me that once we were married, everything would be different. That we would share everything. That she would contribute more. That she just needed to get settled first and then everything would balance out. What happened next, well, is the reason I'm writing this now like 3 years later. It was a Tuesday afternoon. I remember it perfectly because I had just gotten home from work and Victoria was in the bedroom with the door half closed, talking on the phone with someone. Normally, I don't listen to anyone's private conversations. Like I'm not that kind of invasive person, but something in her tone of voice made me stop in the hallway. She was talking quietly, but with that laugh that sounded fake, and I just stood there like an idiot, making no noise, listening. I heard her say, "I swear, this guy is the richest simp I've ever met. He buys everything I ask for without questioning anything." I felt like someone had punched me in the stomach. I literally couldn't breathe. She continued talking, saying things like, "I don't even like him that much, but he's super easy to manipulate. I just have to cry a little or act upset and he gives me what I want. The wedding is going to cost a fortune, but he's paying for everything. After the marriage, I'll have access to all his money, and then I can start saving for when I finally get rid of him." She was laughing like this was all a game, like I was the joke. I stood there frozen, processing what I had just heard, and my brain simply couldn't accept it. I was thinking, maybe I heard wrong. Maybe she's joking with her friend. Maybe it's a hypothetical conversation about something she saw on a show. Any excuse I could invent to not accept the reality that my fiancée, the woman I was going to marry in 4 months, was blatantly using me for my money. I took my phone out of my pocket with trembling hands and started recording. I needed evidence because I knew that if I didn't have proof, no one would believe me. Not even I would believe myself later when I started doubting what I had heard. I recorded like 2 more minutes of her conversation, where she continued saying horrible things like, "The ring he gave me isn't even as expensive as I expected, but I pretended I loved it. His friends are boring, especially that Justin, who always looks at me like he knows something. But it doesn't matter, because once we're married, I can gradually distance him from them." Every word was like a stab, and I kept recording with the phone, almost falling from my hands because I was shaking so much with rage and pain that I could barely keep it steady. When she finally ended the call, I walked into the bedroom, acting like nothing had happened. Victoria smiled at me, that perfect smile that I could now see as completely fake, and asked me how my day was. I told her it was fine, that I was tired, and I went to the living room because I couldn't be near her without wanting to scream at her or cry or both. That night, I barely slept. I just stayed awake, planning what I was going to do with this information, how I was going to confront her, if I should do it privately or publicly, if I should just end the relationship and that's it, or if I needed everyone to know who she really was. The next few weeks were surreal. Victoria kept planning the wedding, kept asking for things, kept acting like the perfect bride, and I kept pretending everything was fine. While inside, I felt completely destroyed. I finally talked to Justin, told him everything, and showed him the recording. He told me he always knew something was wrong, that from the beginning Victoria had given him bad vibes, but he didn't want to insist too much because I seemed happy. He suggested I confront her immediately, cancel everything and kick her out of my life. But I had another plan, a plan that probably wasn't the most mature, but felt necessary. 2 weeks before, what I'm about to tell you happened. We organized an engagement barbecue at my apartment, like a casual gathering with our families and close friends to celebrate the upcoming marriage. Victoria was excited. She invited her parents, her friends, including Monica, who was her best friend, and I invited my family, Justin, some coworkers. I prepared everything, bought the food, the drinks, decorated the place, and Victoria thought everything was genuine, that I was as excited as she was about this celebration. The day of the barbecue arrived and there were like 30 people in my apartment, everyone eating, drinking, laughing, celebrating our supposed eternal love. I waited until everyone was gathered in the living room, like about 2 hours into the party, when everyone was already relaxed and comfortable. Then I stood in the middle of the living room, asked for everyone's attention, and Victoria was looking at me with that smile, thinking I was going to make some romantic toast or say something nice about her. I took out my phone, connected it to the Bluetooth speaker we had, and said, "I want to share something with all of you, something I think you need to hear before this wedding continues." Victoria was looking at me confused, her parents too. Everyone was expectant. I pressed play on the recording, and the audio started playing through the speakers, her voice clear and crisp, saying all those horrible things about me, about how she was using me, about how she was only with me for the money, about her plans to rob me after we got married. The silence that followed was deafening. Victoria turned pale, completely white, and started stuttering something about context, about it being a joke, about me having misinterpreted everything. But the recording was clear. There was no way to misinterpret it. Every word was exactly what it sounded like. Her mom started crying. Her dad looked furious, and Monica just looked at her with an expression of absolute disgust. My friends and family looked at me with pity and rage at the same time, rage toward Victoria for what she had done. I told her in front of everyone, "It's over, give me the ring back right now." She tried to grab my arm, begging me to listen to her, that we could fix this, that she really loved me despite that stupid conversation that was a moment of weakness. But I was beyond the point of listening to excuses. I extended my hand and told her again, "The ring, now." And she finally took it off with trembling hands and gave it to me. I told her she had until the end of the day to get all her stuff out of my apartment, that the engagement was canceled, that the wedding was canceled, that I never wanted to see or hear from her again. Victoria's parents came over. Her dad apologized to me with tears in his eyes, saying he had no idea his daughter was capable of something like this, that they had considered me part of their family and were devastated. Her mom just cried and cried, unable to say anything coherent. Monica approached Victoria and told her their friendship was over, that she couldn't believe she was so cruel and manipulative, and several other people Victoria had invited also left, saying similar things. In less than 20 minutes, Victoria had lost her fiancé, her friends, and basically her dignity in front of everyone she knew. That night, Victoria packed her things, crying and begging, trying to convince me that it had all been a terrible misunderstanding, that she really loved me and had only said those things because she was stressed about the wedding. But I didn't believe her at all. Not a single word, because when someone shows you who they really are, you have to believe them. She left around 11 at night, carrying her suitcases by herself because I refused to help her, and I closed the door behind her, feeling a weird mix of relief and absolute devastation. The following days were an emotional chaos. I had to cancel the wedding venue, the photographer, the catering, everything. And I lost the deposits on most things because it was too late to get them back. I lost like 10,000, just in non-refundable deposits, plus the ring and everything else I had spent on her during our time together. Financially, it was a blow, but emotionally, it was devastating on a completely different level. I kept thinking about all the times I had told her I love you, and she had responded the same, wondering when the lie had started. If she had ever felt anything real for me, or if everything from the beginning had been a calculated performance. Justin stayed with me that first week. Basically moved onto my couch because he knew I wasn't okay. He made me eat, forced me to shower, listened to me when I needed to talk, and stayed silent when I just needed company. I'll be eternally grateful to him for that. Because honestly, I don't know if I could have gotten through it alone in those first days, when everything felt unbearable. Victoria started contacting me obsessively. Calls, text messages, emails, social media messages, from different numbers when I blocked the ones I knew. The messages varied from desperate pleas, where she said she made the biggest mistake of her life, to veiled threats about telling her version of the story, where I was the villain. I ignored everything, blocked everything, and told my friends and family to ignore any attempt by her to contact me through them. Her parents kicked her out of their house. I found out later through Monica, who before cutting contact with Victoria completely, had talked to some mutual friends. Apparently her dad told her he wanted nothing to do with someone who could be so cruel and manipulative, that they had raised her better than that, and her mom was completely devastated and ashamed. Victoria ended up staying on another friend's couch for a while, but that friendship also deteriorated quickly when the friend got tired of her constant dramatics and her attempts to paint herself as the victim. Like 2 months after all this, Victoria showed up at my office. I don't even know how she knew exactly where I worked. She knew the name of the company but had never come to visit me at work. The receptionist called me saying there was a woman asking for me, and when I went down to see who it was, there was Victoria in the lobby, looking horrible compared to how she used to look. Eyes swollen from crying, clothes that clearly hadn't been washed in days. She begged me to talk, to give her 5 minutes, that she needed to explain herself. I told her no, that there was nothing to explain, that the recording had made everything perfectly clear. She started crying right there in the lobby of my office, like a complete emotional breakdown, saying she was sorry, that she had been stupid, that she really loved me, that she would do anything to fix this. Security had to escort her out because she didn't want to leave, and I felt horrible, but I also knew I needed to maintain my boundaries, that letting her back into my life would be the biggest mistake I could make. A few months later, I found out through social media. Because even though I had blocked Victoria, we still had some mutual acquaintances, that she was dating another guy. Some guy named Seth, who apparently also had money, worked in real estate or something like that. I laughed bitterly when I found out because, well, obviously that was her pattern, right? Looking for guys with money she could manipulate. But then, Seth contacted me directly, sent me a message on LinkedIn of all possible platforms, asking me about my experience with Victoria, because they had started dating but something was bothering him, and he had Googled her name, finding some things about our broken engagement. I told him everything, even sent him the recording, and told him to do whatever he wanted with that information, but that I wasn't going to stay silent and let her ruin another person's life. Seth thanked me, told me he had seen signs of materialistic behavior, but wanted to give the benefit of the doubt, and ended that relationship before it progressed further. Victoria sent me a venomous text message after that, full of insults and accusations that I was an obsessive who couldn't get over her, but it only proved that I had done the right thing by warning Seth. The last time I heard anything about Victoria was like 6 months ago. Someone told me she had moved to another city, like she left the state completely to start over, because here she had already burned all her bridges. I didn't ask for more details because honestly I didn't care anymore. I had already processed all the pain and betrayal and was ready to move on with my life. Now I'm in a much better place. I started dating again after like a year of taking time for myself, going to therapy to process all the trauma of having been manipulated like that, rebuilding my trust in people and in my own judgment. I met someone a few months ago, someone I like and who seems genuine. Although I admit there's a part of me that's still hypervigilant, looking for red flags, wondering if she really likes me or if she's playing some elaborate game. My therapist says that's normal after what I went through, that it will take time to rebuild that ability to trust fully. Last week, Justin and I were having beers at my apartment, which I finally renovated, but my way, without Victoria's influence, and he asked me if I ever regretted exposing her publicly like that. I told him no. That maybe it wasn't the most mature way to handle it, but it gave me definitive closure. That there were no loose ends or pending conversations. That everyone who mattered knew exactly who she was and why our relationship had ended. Plus, I said, I probably saved Seth from going through the same thing I did, so in the end, something good came out of all this. I still think about Victoria sometimes. I'm not going to lie and say I've completely gotten over it 100%. I wonder if any part of what she felt for me was real. If there was any genuine moment among all the fake moments, but I guess I'll never know for sure, and that's okay. I don't need to know anymore. What matters is that I learned to recognize warning signs, to trust my instincts when something doesn't feel right, and to value myself enough not to allow anyone to use me that way again.